Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reselling Rhythms. I'm your host, Adam with Adam's Exploits. We're very fortunate today to have one of the resellers that I've actually learned the most from, and I have him, featured on my YouTube page. Guys, I mention him almost every single video that I do in my live stream. Again, he's a wealth of knowledge, great guy. I met him in Las Vegas. I'm a moderator on his YouTube channel. He has over 90,000 members in his Facebook group. He has private and he has a public Facebook group. Casey's just a wealth of knowledge, and he's been doing this for a long time. I wanted to bring him on. Like I explained to you guys before, I try to bring on experts on things that I'm not an expert on. I mean, basically, I do what Casey preaches, but obviously he has a lot more experience than me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my typical interview where I ask Casey to, tell us about himself, how he got involved in reselling. And then we'll roll into a little bit of his bolos, and then we'll open it up to question and answers. So obviously we're popping back and forth to Casey, so I might as well introduce him. Mr. Casey, the Rockstar Flipper, why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for watching. If you are live, we appreciate you joining the live show. And if you watch this on repeat, you can feel free to comment below afterwards for Adam. And any questions you have, you can send on, and I will answer them at a later time. I am Casey, the Rockstar Flipper, and yes, I have done this a long time. I have been a full-time reseller for 11, almost 12 years this summer. And I've been dabbling in reselling for 14 years, which corresponds with the amount of time that I have lived in Florida. I live in the Tampa area. I'm originally from Baltimore. I moved here 14 summers ago. And when I first moved here, I did part-time selling. It's just something to make some money on. And within the first 2 years, I realized I loved it and I was going to become full-time. And that's what I've done for the last 12 years. Everything and anything you can think of. People ask what I sell. Everything from clothing, shoes, electronics. I've sold phones. I've sold Magic the Gathering cards, which is where I got started, and we'll talk about that. I guess we'll touch on that. But I've done it all. If you can buy it, sell it, put it in a box, ship it, I've done it.
You don't sell Grey Goose, though.
No, unfortunately, I
used to sell Grey Goose. Great brand.
Yeah, I don't have the proper license for that. I used to tell people I would sell boxes of jelly beans if I can flip it for a profit. So that's what I do. I do it all. I do everything. I don't have a preference. There's things I like to sell, but if it makes money, I'll do it. And that's what I hope to tell everyone else is whatever you can do that's legal and upstanding, buy it and sell it.
Now, you started out, you said selling Magic the Gathering cards when you were in high school, correct?
Yeah, I collected Magic cards as like a hobby and played a little bit. Actually, I played a lot. I played competitively on a pro tour. It was like the professional tour. And until I was 18, high school, late middle school, high school. And then I moved here. So it'll be 14. I'll be 34. So 20 years old. So 18 to 20, I started realizing, you start thinking about money, that Magic cards had actual monetary value, and I would buy and sell between friends and from stores. And then I figured out what eBay was. It had been around a little while, but I didn't know that you could buy and sell like you did on eBay. And this is in the days of money orders, keep in mind.
Right. Had they already gone to the buy it nows, or were they strictly auctions?
Nope, they were this was the opening days of buy it now. I can remember the forum boards talking about if anyone was having more luck with buy it nows versus auctions. And that's really how I started. I don't recall. I know I did a few, but not many auctions ever. I figured out what, I was selling something for locally. I would bump the price a few dollars higher to cover everything I needed to make a few extra dollars per card. And it would go right up for that price and it would sell. I figured if I could make an extra $2 or $3 online over what I was getting locally, and could sell, I was selling a couple hundred cards a month. I'm like, man, that'd be an extra $300, $400. So
you were making, as an 18, 19-year-old, how much were you making?
Probably, anywhere from $100 to $200. When I first started, on a couple weeks, I can remember hitting $300 a week.
And minimum wage was probably like $6, $7 an hour back then.
Yeah, the only job I worked in high school. So my dad is a general contractor. I worked for him over the summers, but the only actual job I had was at Chili's in a mall. And it was $7 an hour, which was great. $7 an hour at 16, 17 years old was back then. And I'm showing my age again. I know I'm not that old, but that was 2002. So 17 years ago, $7 an hour was pretty good. And then I got tips because of the job that I did. We got to deliver food around the mall and get tips. So when I started making an extra $200 a week, I was like, wow, like, man, I made $800 this month. And I was writing it down in notebooks. And that's how I was able to buy a car, and how I was able to, you know, when my parents moved to Florida before I did, how I had an apartment at 18, 19 years old. Yeah, that's how I did it.
Now, you had decided to try the college route, and you decided against it. You went for what, 1 year to a local college in Baltimore?
I did 2, yeah. So when I graduated in 2003, from 2002 to 2003, they had, at least in my area, where if you had enough high school credits, I had so many credits in high school, I didn't have to go to high school, but they forced you to. So in exchange for going for 2 classes, the whole year, just 2 classes, they allowed me to take my college classes. Basically, you could choose whatever your major or whatever you were going to get your general education in, and you could take those classes at the time you were supposed to take high school when you would have been in school. And so they called it like Jumpstart or something. So I took my first year of college credits during my senior year of high school. And then my second year, which was my first full year in 2003 out of high school, I took business. So I did get an associate 32 credit on business. It was called business management or business startup or something.
Back then it was business management, right?
Yeah. And that was from the University of...
You had an associate's degree in business management.
Yeah, the University of Maryland. UMBC half and half. So the first credits were taken at a community college. And then the second half was UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which no one knew existed until last NCAA tournament when the Golden Retrievers, that's the mascot, beat Virginia, #1 seed. Only time it's ever happened in college basketball. And that was my college that did it.
I didn't realize that was your college. Okay.
Last year, UMBC, yep.
Cool. So you're a proud alumnus.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, with the associate. Yeah. So that was summer, fall 2003 into spring semester 2004 was the last time that I went to that college.
Now, what happened? You decided that it wasn't practical; it was more theory, and you decided that you were more into reselling and buying things and making money. And you decided, I don't need a college degree per se to resell.
Yeah, I mean, everything kind of fell into place right in the same time. So I graduate, I start doing some college. My parents moved that spring to Florida. They wanted to retire here and just wanted to live here. So they moved. I had to kind of wing it on my own since I wasn't moving with them. I'm 18, 19 years old, with no real place to go because they're like, we're selling the house and we're moving. I'm like, sweet. And so that's right when I, figured out that cards were worth money. And that whole year, they didn't move for about 6-7 months. And I was able to save up all that money and get a place that I kept for a while. And as much as I liked it, I was like, man, I really kind of want to go to Florida too. And so I struggled, making $800 on Magic cards and eBay and working the Chili's job and some other work that my dad had lined up for me. It was hard. It was hard to come up with the bill money. I needed like $1,500 a month. And I realized I was paying for college. And I was like, if I keep going to college, I'm going to have to come up with even more money. And the college I didn't like school. I was really good at it. I'm probably like, I could be on Jeopardy, but I hate it. I hate that I know all that stuff. And I was like, I don't want to sit here. My college professor was about 50, 60 years old. He'd been teaching for 30 years. And I realized when I did the math that he had been teaching since he graduated college. And I said, what business do you own or have you owned? He had never owned a business. I'm like, you're teaching me business and you've never owned a business. Yeah, I'm done with this college thing. And I'm going to sell all my stuff and move to Florida. And so that's what happened after that semester.
Yeah, when I was in college, I always preferred, again, I could be getting the terminology wrong. It was a lot longer than you were in college. But I always enjoyed having I think it's called co-adjunct professors. They were like business people that taught part-time at the university. And because they would teach you practical things, as opposed to just theory.
Yeah. There actually was another professor there that was younger, probably, mid-30s, and he did own a business. I'll never forget his business too. He owned a graphic print and design company, and he drove his truck to college. I remember his truck with the bright graphics on it. And they made business cards and vinyl signs and all that stuff. But he owned the business and would come in, and I kept trying to get him, but he was not available. And I was like, man. And I guess thankfully it didn't happen that way because I went the right route. But I always wonder if I had learned from him what I would have learned.
Thank you, Cece. Not co-adjunct, adjunct. I did half right. That was, oh God, that was almost 40 years ago.
40? Wow. Yeah. So it's been 15. Yeah, 15. So that was spring 2014. So right about now, or 2004. So that was 15 years ago. And then the following year I moved to Florida. So it's been 14 years since I moved here.
Okay, so why don't you tell us? I mean, okay, so then you decided. When did you get into the cell phones? That was several years after that.
Yeah, when I first moved here.
What did you do when you first moved to Florida?
I lived an hour north of here, a little town called Spring Hill. It's only famous for being next to a place called Weeki Wachee Springs, where they have a mermaid show. Real mermaids. I know they're real. Trust me, I promise you. Look it up, Weeki Wachee Springs. But we lived up there. It's a very, very small town. It's still a small town. And everything that I had learned about buying and selling, right as I left, I discovered Craigslist, which you guys, I'm sure, are all familiar with. So this is, again, 2004, 2005. And I figure out Craigslist, which was brand new at the time. It didn't have a lot of history. I think it opened in 2001, Craigslist did, or 2002. Back then, there were no categories for Craigslist. Everything was in just a for sale. You couldn't select the area that you wanted. So every day I would open Craigslist and I would search everything that was for sale and try to find stuff that looked like it was cheap. I started buying and selling, some video games, probably like PlayStation 1 back then. And just anything I could. I started expanding on the Magic cards because there wasn't enough cards. I was realizing that every Magic card available that was profitable, I was buying. And I was like, I've got to find more stuff to buy and sell. I got to find more stuff. There's not enough Magic cards. So when I moved to Florida, there up in that small town, there were no Magic cards. It was all in Tampa if there were any cards. And this was an hour drive. I had sold my car to move to Florida. And so my parents had a car, but I didn't have really any transportation. So I had to look at things that were available in that area, in that little small town, and convince people to basically meet me at the gas station outside of the house that was just down the road. One, it was safe. And two, I was the only place I could get. And so I would look for anything and everything that was cheap. Car audio, video games. Yeah, I sold a trumpet once, just anything. And then I would just turn it back on either eBay or put it back up locally and flip it. And that's what I did when I first moved here. And I was living, 19, 20 years old, living with my parents. So
you decided, and I've used this on the show probably every third or fourth show, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes, absolutely. You take what's available. So this is something that to this day, I mean, even as recently as a couple days ago, I had a conversation with someone. I live in Florida, and you can go out to any thrift store, and it was like, Tommy Bahama shirts or Margaritaville shirts. Everybody here has those. And so you go talk to somebody in, like, say, Minnesota, and they're like, I've never seen a Tommy Bahama shirt in my life. And I'm like, well, you live in Minnesota. It's still snowing in May. Nobody has them there. And so it's your location, what's available to you. I can tell you to buy Tommy Bahama shirts till the end of time, but if your area doesn't have them, it's not going to do you any good. And so where I moved, there were no Magic cards. What I had done to make this money didn't exist. So I had to adjust. I had to transition into something else. And it just happened to be anything I could buy and sell at that time. I still got Magic cards from time to time. When I would find them, I would buy them, but it just wasn't like it, what I was used to.
Well, over the years, I have different life experience than you. I was mostly in retail and wholesale sales, and I've told people multiple times kind of why I had to get into reselling, some medical issues. And I basically do this to keep myself active and keep my brain, functioning properly. And then in the process, want to get a few other things taken care of. I want to get back to the gym and try to get healthy, and then have this as like a supplement to my my fixed income. But a couple other things I bring again. Life is you learn experience. You get the experience from life. And one of the things I say also, the only thing that is permanent is change. So you got to roll and you got to adapt. I mean, like eBay is constantly making these seller updates, the April updates, the spring updates. And you know what? It's their basketball court. It's their ball.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to play, you got to play by the rules.
That's right.
I'm the first one that, wants to complain, but it's like, genius. If you want to sell on a platform, you have to do things the way they want you to do it.
That's right. And if you took that back to, 15 years ago, there was no, this is going to make everyone go nuts. There was no Facebook. MySpace was what everyone was on when I moved here. So there was no Facebook market. Somebody just mentioned in the chat, I think it was Jen. Yeah, there was no Facebook Marketplace. Man, I would have killed for a Facebook Marketplace back then. That would have been like a dream. I can remember when Craigslist changed the categories to actually sort things by electronics and furniture and general. And like everyone was like, whoopee, like there was a party. Like, yes, it's so much easier now. And then, we didn't have smartphones. I was using, the little Nextel, the beep beep phones. And the two-way walkie-talkies and radios with my dad. And so there was no way to like log into the app store and download the Craigslist app and search for keywords. None of that existed. Like, think about all those changes between 15 years ago and now. I mean, think about how much has been added. So yeah, you have to keep changing, and it's not always all bad. Some of it's really good. When things updated on Craigslist, it was amazing. When we got smartphones, it was incredible. When Facebook came out in 2007, it was incredible. I mean, all these things, there's always more stuff coming. So don't get discouraged by one change. Just keep changing.
Yeah, like my last guest I had on, Derek, NASCAR man 3345. He's into the toys and collectibles and Matchbox toys and things like that, G.I. Joes. And we were talking about, sourcing at yard sales and garage sales. And he said, yeah, he goes, back in the day, and he mentioned some of the sourcing items that he uses, the books and, the material he used to figure out values, and he used to carry around the book in his pocket. And now we have a computer in our pocket.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, yard sales and garage sales. Again, when I lived in a small town, we had them, in the neighborhoods, but there wasn't a ton of neighborhoods. So, and I had to I didn't have a car yet. I had to save for a car. It took me probably 6 months, and I had to get where I could go. I had to do the research. I would start, Craigslist had a garage sale section at that time. They did have that. And I would email and message anyone who had a garage sale remotely close and ask for everything that they had. Like, what all do you have? What kind of prices? So that I knew where I should go and get a ride to, or borrow my parents' car or whatever. Like, that's what I did.
Now, back in the day, were you putting out posting flyers on telephone poles and were you doing that stuff?
No, I think I came in a step ahead of that. What I did do, at one point, I paid for an ad in the little newspaper, the little whatever it was, and the thing that Craigslist, this was kind of what started my whole career and made me. I want to say this was like my genius moment, but everyone stole it from me, so it didn't last long. I started working Craigslist in reverse, where instead of looking for stuff for sale, I would put ads out advertising that I wanted to buy stuff. And so when I was looking for things, I'd find 3 or 4 things a day and message them and maybe get like 1 thing a day or 2 things a day. When I put the ads out looking to buy stuff, my phone would not stop. I would provide an email and I would provide a number that said text messages only. And I actually signed up for, it was a text messaging service at the time that forwarded the messages to my phone. This is like above and beyond, way ahead of its time. And my phone would not stop all day. They would say, I have this for sale, I have this for sale, I have this. And then that's when it took off. That's when I started buying so much stuff. I didn't have enough money to buy all the stuff.
Well, we discussed on your show before, in fact, I think it was the last show that you did. I don't know if it was the VIP show or the regular show, but about printing up business cards. And you can use a Google Voice number and put a number on there that you have Google Voice, and it'll get forwarded to your regular cell phone.
Right.
Put the things that you're looking for, and if you're going to an estate sale or if you're going to a yard sale, you can tell the people, hey, look, when you guys decide to close up, if you want to give me a call, come over and I'll, maybe I can make you an offer on some of the items. And I don't know if it was you or someone else said, don't offer to buy everything, because then you have all this junk.
Yeah. So that was probably my next progression. So after I'd been living with my parents for like 6-9 months, I bought a car. It was a Ford Mustang convertible. I was like, I'm in Florida, I'm going to get a convertible. But it ended up being really good because I could put the top down and haul stuff in it. And once I had a car, then I had so much freedom and ability to buy and sell everything. I started going to many garage and yard sales because I realized I was getting a lot of stuff. And I did make the mistake. I had business cards made, and I would give it to everyone. I'm like, I'll buy, message me or call me after your garage sale on Sunday, and I'll come out Monday and take a look at everything. And this is about the time people could send me, really bad cell phone photos, basically. And so they would, and I would go out and buy all their stuff. I'd load it all in the car. If they had a couch or something, I wouldn't take that, but I'd take everything I could fit in the car and I'd give them $50 and I'd bring it home and I'd put all the individual items that were too big to ship up on Craigslist, like baby stroller, $20, and in two end tables that I had laid in the backseat of my car, 2 end tables, $20. And so I'd sell all this big stuff and make some money. And then anything that was little and shippable, I would put on eBay, and that was it. My parents had like one of those outside storage, shed things, and I'd put all that stuff in there. And that's how I was buying and selling until I could get my own place. So I did that for like I think I lived with my parents total of 2 years here in Florida. Right around the 2-year mark, they were tired of living in the small town and decided to move to Tampa because my dad's work was always down here, of course, as a contractor. Everyone here wanted it. So it made sense. He moved here, and I moved down here with them into the house they moved into. But I got an apartment a couple months later after we moved to the town we live in now, just outside of Tampa. Right. And that was, so if I moved here in 14, 15, that must have been 2007 or 2008, we moved to this Tampa area. And because I've lived in my house now for going on 6 years that I bought this house. I lived in an apartment for 2 years and a condo. So 8, 9 years. And what are we, 19? So 2010, we must have moved here in 2009, 2010. We moved down to this town that we live in now. And once I was close to town and I could put up ads and market, it was life as you know it now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What was the progress when you had your own apartment and you had your own car? What did you progress in? Was that when you got into the cell phones, or
that's when I was on Craigslist buying and selling as much as I could. That's how I was affording the apartment and everything. Because once we moved down to Tampa, everything was available to me. I only had to drive 10 minutes, 15 minutes. There was no more hour round trips. I can remember when I first got the car, still living up there, I would drive down to Tampa at like 8 in the morning, and I would just wait around to meet people all day because I didn't want to go home and have to turn back around. I just sit there. So once we moved here, bought and sold everything that I could find. I discovered storage units. That was the first step. This is before storage units was on TV. Again, we're talking about 7, 8 years ago. At this point, no storage unit TV shows. Bought storage units, but didn't have, with an apartment, I didn't have a lot of room to store it all. So I went and rented. Our apartments had, those outside detached storage spaces. They were supposed to be for your car. I rented it for my stuff, and I was buying and selling storage units. And one of the storage units that I bought was a cell phone store, an accessory and cell phone store that had closed down. And I think I paid like $300 or $400. It was a 5x10 unit. It wasn't very big. 50. I mean, think about what 50 square feet is.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah. And so, but it was packed. There were boxes and boxes of chargers and accessories. And there were some unopened demo phones, and there were some actual phones. And there was just tons and tons of this cell phone stuff. And, I did well on eBay. I sold a lot of stuff. I made a lot of money on eBay. But when I bought that unit for $300 or maybe $400, and I brought it home, and I had, I'd been dating Kate for a little while at this point, my fiance now. I put that stuff up on eBay, and I'll never forget when she came to me one morning and was like, we sold like 15 items last night. And I was like, whoa, like we were selling 2 or 3 items a day. And I was like, 15 items. So we hurried up and packed all this stuff up. And I went out to the store and I bought a nice new printer because we were handwriting stuff, literally. And so I bought his printer, I bought all this stuff, and came home, and she's like, we sold 15 more things. We couldn't sell it fast enough. We sold that whole unit probably north of $5,000. And that was like a lottery win for us. I bought all the equipment I needed. I put, $2,000 into the new business account that I opened in order to have like buying money. And it was that was the light bulb where I was like, man, this is what people want. Like they want cell phones and technology. So from that day on, I created ads. I'll buy phones. I'm buying cell phone tech. I'm buying accessories. And my phone just lit up left and right. I could buy stuff and sell it before I could even get it home. And that was 2010, 2011, and that's what I did for the next 3 or 4 years. Cell phones, technology. And if we think about that today, it's still what's hot and popular today. Back then was the explosion. Smartphones came out in 2008, 2009. People were starting to transition from flip phones to the very first iPhone, the very first G2 Google Android phone. Whenever new technology and kind of a turn of the century, turn of an age dawns, things just blow up. And from then on, tech is tech. Tech is the thing that everyone wants. They want a deal on it. They always upgrade. They always trading. They're always getting new used stuff. I mean, you can buy a used computer. Somebody's willing to take 30 or 40 bucks less, and somebody else is willing to pay 30 or 40 more. Boom, you've made an $80 profit that quick. And so that's what we did for 3-4 years until 2013, 2014.
Okay, I didn't realize it. So I started following, I guess, probably in like 2015-ish.
Yeah, 2015. Yeah, 2014. In November of 14, I created my YouTube channel, but I didn't upload anything until early mid 15.
Yeah, I think I started following like the end of 15 or beginning.
Yeah, that's when I got really serious into uploading videos at the end of 15. The thing about cell phones, which I'll touch on it, I have no problem. A lot of people always ask.
Yeah, I mean, you could just touch on it. You don't have to really get into the
cell phones is as profitable as it is and as big of a market as it is, and the money. There's a lot of laws. There's a lot of risks. So first of all, cell phones is the most frauded item on eBay, believe it or not. Part of the reason is because there's just so many of them. So the numbers are just higher. Part of the reason is a lot of cell phones are a commodity overseas. So a lot of overseas people get involved with it. And so we all know what happens there for the most part. There's just a lot of shady characters in the cell phone world. I dealt with a lot of good people. But the other problem with the cell phone world is you start competing with big companies, and they're not a real big fan of that. And so when you compete with big companies, be it a cell phone company, be it Target, be it the North Face, whatever it is, you are at a disadvantage already. And if you anger them, they can stop you from buying and selling. And so long story short, one of the largest cell phone companies in the world was very angry at a lot of people reselling their merchandise. They didn't like it. They didn't want people doing it. And so they put a stop to it. If a big company wants you to stop selling their merchandise, they can stop you. And there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing.
Yeah, they have very deep pockets. I never disclosed this before on the channel, and it's not a big thing. But I was, back in the day, I was always kind of like an entrepreneur. I didn't want to stay in the sales. I wanted to get in my own business, whatever. And Casey, you and I discussed about the alarm business. But my friend and I decided to get into, before the alarm business, try to get into property tax appeals. Because property taxes are very high in New Jersey, and they continue to raise. They're crazy in New Jersey. So we went to bought a business opportunity, and he said it would work great in New Jersey. And little did we know that the larger municipalities said, we're not going to allow you to do this. We're going to fight you. We're going to hire attorneys. We're going to get, basically, it wasn't a cease and desist letter, but basically they said, you're practicing law without a license. I said, no, we're not. So what are you going to do? You're going to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight a city? So we just said, okay, we're done.
Yep. So yeah, that was, and in theory, I could have just stopped selling that company's merchandise, which I did. And honestly, what's weird is that company was the smallest percentage of my cell phone business. When we went back and pulled the numbers, I was 10-15% of their stuff and 30% of every other company. It was weird, but it just the way it happened. And so it left a really bad taste in my mouth. And as good as the money was, don't get me wrong, I made a lot of money. And this is when I really started making money. So I bought this house Christmas 2013. And if you think back to my lawsuit, what happened with me and the shutdown of that was in 2014. And in January of 2014, literally the month after I bought this house, they served us with the civil suit for business stuff. And up until that time, and remember, this is almost 6 years ago, I was pulling down numbers north of anywhere from 20 to 30,000 clear a month. I mean, we were making, that's how I saved up the money to buy this house. We went on 2 cruises a year. We were young, I was 27, 28 years old. So I was blowing money. I probably should have been saving more of it. You know, I bought an expensive car. I bought this house. I went on trips, but we were making a ton of money. And I had a decision to make at that point. Do I want to continue with the other companies and continue doing this business, which was already a risk to begin with? Or do I want to kind of transition into something else and maybe not make as much money, but play it safer? And so I took the safer route, and I was like, we're done with cell phones. You know, we're not going to continue going on. It's still a great market. You can still make money, but it's just very, very high risk. So that's when we transitioned, right about 2014, 2015. I started the YouTube channel. The reason I started the YouTube channel was because when I realized I was going to stop selling phones, I had quite a bit of inventory. I talked to Kate and I said, look, we've got 3 or 4 months of things left that we can sell and make money without me buying anything else. But in those 3 or 4 months, I have to figure out another spot for transition. What are we going to buy and sell? What else can we replace cell phones with? And so I was like, I'm going to go on YouTube. There's got to be other people, you know, buying and selling. And there were a few. And I'm sure a lot of you in the chat can probably guess 5 years ago who was on YouTube that I went to look at.
CH?
There were a couple, and feel free if you. I know you know who they are if you want to shout them out. But there were 2 in particular that I found.
Mike Global Voodoo and Pete Craigslist Hunter.
No, neither one.
No.
Actually, I found them after, but the first 2 that I watched were Steve Rakin and Bonafide Hustler.
Oh, Bonafide. Well, Bonafide. Yeah, okay. Well, they were before them. I mean,
yeah, they were on for a while. Those were the first 2 I saw.
Mike and Peter OGs. I mean, they were before Bonafide and Steve. I mean, how long Steve been in the reselling business? For 7, 8 years?
7 years. Yeah, a lot. I just saw a couple comments, and I'll definitely do Q&A for everyone. But
yeah, there's been a lot of questions. I'm trying to pay attention to Casey, but I have my moderators.
Yeah, we've been on for long enough. I'm gonna fast forward to the end of my boringness, but somebody in the chat,
a little bit about your sourcing, and then you were involved with the bins, and now you don't do the bins, and why you
that's where we got to
wrap it all up. And
yeah, after the lawsuit, that's where we started having to learn where else we could get merchandise, what we could buy. There's a guy in your chat, some random guy, WV, was asking who the guest is. I don't know who he is. Wade? Who's that? And somebody talked about the deflation of the lawsuit. We were deflated. We went from making $20,000 plus a month to we didn't know how we were going to eat. Very, very deflating. Trust me. So the next step when I got on YouTube was, you know, Steve Rakin was selling clothes and blazers. And I had a friend, which was the tip-off, who went to a Goodwill store one day and bought like 4 pair of True Religion jeans. They were all real. And at the time, we didn't know any better. But she bought them for, I want to say, $3 a pair and sold them all 4 for like $200. And I said to her, I said, hey, you know, I was on YouTube and I saw these guys and they said that they're doing this full time and they're making money on clothes and books and things. I was like, you know, and she was a very close friend of ours. She knew about the lawsuit in the business and she goes, you know, what are you guys going to sell? You should go to these Goodwills and these thrift stores and figure it out. And so we started every day. We'd get up and go to a different Goodwill and just hunt the whole store, everything. And we'd come home with stuff and we started selling it. And we, you know, the eBay store would I made 2 spreadsheets, one for our phone stuff because I knew that was going to end, and one for the clothing and the shoes and everything we were bringing home. And I was like, let's see how much we can make. And I think the very first month of Goodwill shopping, we made like $1,200 or $1,400. And I was like, whoa, like this is viable. You know, we're going to have to get up and do it every day. And that's how we started. And then I discovered the Goodwill outlets because on our trips through the Goodwill, one of the retail stores came up with 2 addresses in the same shopping center. And I was like, that's weird. And I was like, maybe it's just a big complex and they moved buildings. And so we drove there and I saw the 2 different stores. This turns out to be one of my local bins that has a retail and a bin. And so we went into the bins on accident first. And I thought we didn't belong there. I thought it was like their back sorting room. And I was like, oh, yeah, I was like, oh, I'm sorry. We didn't mean to come in here. We're going to the store. And Lay's like, oh, no, you can shop in here. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? We can shop in here. And so that's when I discovered the bins. And I was like, whoa, like this is where it's at. And so we spent the whole day at the bins and came home with so much stuff. And then when I went home, after I knew what they were called, I went on my YouTube searches. And that's when I found some people making videos about it. And I was like, this is crazy. And welcome to what you know as me today. That was our start.
95% of you probably already know what the bins are. I try to, if terminology comes up that new sellers may not know, I mention it and tell you what it is. The bins are by pound Goodwill outlet stores, and what they do is they have these big, huge blue bins that they roll out, and they'll roll them out, and then you got to wait, and like everybody like stands there, they want to like jump on top of the people as they're wheeling them out, and they have to wait. They say, oh, wait. So then they wheel them out, and they say, okay, now you can go sort through it, and it's craziness. And then eventually they'll sort them out, but there's no really like set schedule, which that annoys me. And it's like craziness. People, I mean, I've had my cart taken, I've been bumped out of the way, and then there's broken stuff in the bins. I mean, some people source. That's all they do is they source in the bins. Now, you decided about a year or so ago to stop sourcing at the bins, correct?
Yeah. So here was the thing. The bins was good. Now the problem with the bins for me, the good one is a long drive. It's an hour plus drive for me. And I was spending 2 hours a day going there, and the quality went down. So between the loss of time, the quality going down, a little bit more competition, not a lot, but a little bit. Everything was kind of a perfect fire for like, it wasn't the greatest sourcing thing anymore. It wasn't as good as it used to be. It was good for a while. And again, another period of adjustment. At that time, I had built up such a following on social media and Instagram and YouTube that people were messaging me constantly saying, hey, I don't like clothing. I'm going back to work full job or this or that. I have 200 pieces of clothing, or 100 pairs of shoes I need to get rid of. And so I started seeing this, and I'm like, man, if you could sell it to me at a good price, I'll take all 100 pairs. And some of them were local, some of them were far away, so we'd have to take the shipping into consideration. But there was quite a few deals, and I've bought out inventory from many, many people that watch me, follow me, or just, even people that are storage unit buyers that deal in tools and electronics. They don't deal in clothes or shoes. And so they're like, I don't want any of this. If you want it, come get it. Give me $50. And so I was able to buy more in 1 or 2 transactions that I could buy all week at the bins. And so that's what I started doing. I'm like, my time is better spent, an hour getting stuff and 39 hours listing stuff rather than 35 hours trying to source all this and 5 hours, only spent listing it, because we were falling behind listing constantly, of course, like everyone else. And so I was like, if I can eliminate the sourcing time, then I can spend all that time selling as opposed to buying. And so that's what we did. And so, we have thousands of pieces of inventory still at this house. I don't have to source for months and I'd be good, probably. But we do, we list, and then eventually I kind of full circled back to, as good as clothes are, and they're amazing and they're readily available, I wanted to sell some higher dollar items. I started going to pawn shops because I got really experienced with pawn shops. I met a pawn shop owner and he told me, how good of stuff they had. And that's where my video games and electronics to this day still come from, a lot of pawn shops. And I've sold thousands of games and items on Amazon. I learned about Amazon. I've had an Amazon account for 5 years. 2014 was when I started that, right around the YouTube channel. And so I still sell on Amazon to this day. I list stuff, some FBM, some FBA. We send it there, and we sell thousands of dollars a month on Amazon.
FBM fulfilled by merchant, FBA fulfilled by Amazon.
Right, yeah. So that means, some of our stuff is here. Heavy stuff that I don't want to ship to Amazon because you have to pay for it, or that I know it sells in like a day or two. I don't even want to wait for it to get there. Other stuff like bread and butter, lightweight video games, small handheld game systems. We'll box all those up. We'll list it on Amazon. We'll get a label from them, stick it on the box, and ship it to their warehouse, and they'll store it and send it out for us when it sells. So we mix that up. We do, the Amazon stuff because it doesn't require any back end work from us or shipping, just me getting it. And then all the clothing and all that stuff is here for eBay. And that's where we split our time between eBay and Amazon. I have 2 eBay stores, an Amazon store. Some of the stuff cross-posted on, Poshmark. And then I still to this day will flip really heavy items locally. If I see something that's a good deal, I'll buy it. If it's bigger, now fast forward, we have SUVs and trucks or whatever, but we'll buy it and flip it locally. I don't do too many local sales, maybe 1 a week, 1 every other week, but here and there.
Okay, I just want to touch on 2 quick things and then open it up to question and answers. So I'm sure people have a lot of questions for Casey while he's here. You did a little bit of private label and you did a little bit of liquidation. What was the pluses and minuses, and why don't you do that anymore?
They're tough businesses. So private label is a dream business, but very, very, very difficult to start, run, and grow. So what is private label? Private label means that you buy generic items. Most people will automatically think that you buy it from China, overseas, from India, which is pretty much true. You can get a local domestic supplier, but it's usually not as cheap and it's usually harder to find. So there's a lot of websites, Alibaba, AliExpress come to mind. There's a few others that you can buy generic items. And so I love using my candle as an example. Let's say that you wanted to start a candle business and you bought these red candles from China, and the Chinese guy says, hey, if you buy 100 of these, I'll give them to you for $2 a piece. And you're like, sweet, I'll take 100 red ones, 100 green ones, and 100 blue ones. And so they all show up to your door, and you get some special labeling, some plastic packaging, whatever you want to call it. You stick it in the packaging, and it says Casey's Candles. And so now you've created a private label, your own labeled product, because nobody owns this candle. You know, this is a Yankee candle as it is, but when it shows up from China, it's just a piece of red wax. And so you've made it Casey's Candles, and then you list it on Amazon, you ship it into their warehouse, and you sell Casey's Candles for $20 a candle. And hopefully you sell them and you make $18 a candle, less your fees and all. Now the problem with private label is two things, three really, but two major ones. One, you have to have the money to buy quantity. You can't just buy one of something and sell it. If you're going to get a deal and you're going to buy from China overseas, you got to buy hundreds. So you're going to put the money out. Then you got to ship it to Amazon, and then you got to wait for them to sell, and then you got to get paid from Amazon. So there's a big gap between you buying stuff, getting it, shipping it in, packaging it, selling it, etc., and then getting paid. The second huge problem is everyone knows what a Yankee candle is. Everyone goes on Amazon and searches Yankee candles. Let me get my favorite candle. Nobody knows what Casey's Candles are. Nobody's heard of me. Nobody knows I exist. And so you have to spend money to let people know you exist. You have to advertise, you have to social media, Facebook, Instagram, paid per click, PPC ads, all these things to get your name in front of somebody else. Imagine if somebody came to you with a pair of shoes and it wasn't Nike or Adidas. Nobody's ever heard of your shoes. Nobody's going to buy it. And so that's the problem with private label. I did it. I realized after I bought 500 pieces of something that I was selling one a day at best, and that no one knew I existed. My search ranking was low, and I was like, man, this takes a lot of money and a lot of work. And so that was the last time I really did private label. I still have a few things going on, but it's just really hard. It takes a ton of money. The liquidations is better because the merchandise you buy from pallets, returns, customer returns, liquidation, shelf pulls, everyone knows what it is. You might get Samsung, you might get Sony, you might get Nike. And so those are easier. Again, you're going to spend some money because you're buying a whole pallet of merchandise, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. There are some cheaper ones, but yeah, you have to have this space to organize it, store it, open it, have it delivered, and then the time to go through it and test it and all that stuff. I do still buy pallets here and there. I've bought a lot of pallets in my life. Kind of the reason that we don't do it as much is because it seems the quality of some of them went down, and a lot of the merchandise ended up being more so bad than good. And I would spend endless hours testing stuff and going through it. And it just didn't seem as good as buying someone else's inventory that's already gone through it. So that's where we focus our time now.
So you felt it wasn't worth it, I guess, and the margin was shorter. Well, the margin's not short typically on liquidation, but it's very short on the wholesale products.
Yeah, it can be. You know, some of them are better than others. Huh?
15 to 20%.
Yeah, I mean, on an average, probably 20%, 25. So like if you spend $1,000 on a pallet out the door delivered, you'll make $200 or $300. If you get lucky, you might get to 50%. I don't know anyone making more than 50%. That's after fees, shipping, everything clean and clear. But for someone to make more than, spending $1,000 on a pallet to make more than 500 is probably unheard of. It's rare. Doubling your money just non-existent in those types of things. Because remember, when you buy a pallet, especially customer returns or shelf pulls or things like that, immediately 10% is going to be junk. Just right off the top, you're going to lose 10% of it to what they yield as scrap or no good. Like it's just going to be just right in the junk. And then 10% more is going to be things that are missing items, missing accessories, sold, with less than that. There's always issues with these pallets, and you'll get a lot of good stuff. You may end up getting an iPad that's worth $200 that, based on cost averaging, you paid $50 for, and so you'll make a killing on that. But then now all of a sudden your $150 profit, you just threw away $100 worth of stuff. So it can be done. It's a good business. There's a lot of people make a lot of money doing it, but you got to spend a lot and you got to have a lot of time. Those operations that are successful with wholesale and pallets typically involve multiple employees in a warehouse with a building. And that was never something I really wanted to. I had an office. I had 2 employees. I just don't like it. I don't like having people being responsible for people. I don't like having the building, the rent, the overhead. Just never really been a dream of mine to like grow some big Amazon operation.
Okay, I'm just going to mention 2 things real quickly, guys. And again, I'm not an expert, but I told you guys, I watch a lot of YouTube. I network a lot. I'm in a lot of different Facebook groups. As far as liquidation, it's a big gamble when you don't get a manifested list. Basically, a manifest is a list of the products that are in the lot, whether it be a pallet or a bin or whatever, a box. And my understanding is, following other resellers that handle liquidation, is you want to look at their top 2 or 3 items on the list because they're your most profitable ones. And then the problem is if 1 or 2 of those items isn't working properly, it kind of like shoots your whole profit out the window. So again, don't gamble with unmanifested or unitemized lists.
Right.
I mean, that's a huge gamble.
Huge. Yeah. I would never, and I can't recall ever in my history ever buying anything unmanifested. It's just way too risky. The one exception I will tell you, circa 4 years ago or 5 years ago, whenever Radio Shack finally did their last liquidation, I think it was 5 years ago, a friend of mine had hit me up with a couple pallets. They were like $1,000 a piece. And I was like, yeah, I want to take 2 pallets, and he's like, okay, they're $2,000. They had a manifest of the merchandise. The problem was they had 72 pallets and the list was all 72 and they didn't have a breakdown of how it was sorted onto each pallet. So it wasn't like I could just pick a pallet based on what was on the list. It was just, they're going to send you 2 pallets. And I was like, man, that sucks. I might get the 2 that are at the end of the line that got the junk, And, so I told my friend about it, and I was like, hey, Dave, what do you think about buying these 2 pallets? And I said, do you think I should take the gamble? It's $2,000. And he's like, oh, so, it's up to you. It's $2,000. Worst case, it's going to happen. What? Maybe you sell it for $1,000 or $1,500 and lesson learned. And I was like, yeah, I don't really want to take that gamble. And he was like, how many pallets do they have? And I was like, 72. He's like, $72,000. I said, yeah. I said, for all of them. And he goes, call them up and offer them $50,000. We'll take all 72 right now. And I was like, come again? And a week later, 72 pallets of Radio Shack merchandise was delivered. And I said, why are we doing this? And he goes, well, this guarantees you get all the good stuff and the bad stuff, and you get a deal. I'm like, turned out to be a really good investment. We sold over $300,000 worth of stuff off of those pallets. So, yeah, I mean, I guess if you buy everything, you can't lose, but that's one of those things that just happened. But yeah, always buy pallets with full list, full manifest, full everything.
Okay, guys, why don't we roll into the question and answer part? We're very fortunate to have Casey on here, and I tell you guys, a wealth of knowledge. I pretty much mention Casey every single video I ever do, and something I'll bring up, and I'll say, oh, I learned this from Casey, or Casey said this, or Casey said that. So, guys, just to make it easier, if you can put, at the symbol at and my name, or put question in capital letters or a lot of question marks. So when the questions come up, we can see them, and it'll make it easier for Casey and I to spot the questions. So why don't you guys just roll out with some of your questions?
Yes, please. I was just going to say too, I saw a couple people asking about and mentioning eBay Open. Somebody asked about what it was. eBay Open is the yearly eBay conference in Las Vegas. It's July 22, 23, and 24 this year. That's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The tickets were sold out, but I know they put a waiting list up, and some people as recently as a few days ago were able to buy a ticket. I don't know if they still can. If you're local to the area and you don't have a ticket, just come hang out with us. But it's at the Mandalay Bay. So yeah, that's what eBay Open is. So this and that question, where do I source in Tampa? So my biggest sourcing in this area is Salvation Armies. The Tampa area, at least in this area, most of the Salvation Armies, if not all of them, are 50% off on Wednesdays. So that's a huge supply of merchandise, shoes, clothes, ties, things that I buy. There are 4 Salvation Armies within 30 minutes of me. So those are my typical. That's North Tampa, South Tampa. If you're familiar with this area, Brandon, Florida, which is a big suburbia town. And then Wesley Chapel, which is the North Tampa one. So those 4 are all close. I do go to Orlando from time to time, probably once a month. It's about an hour and 10-minute drive over there towards Disney. There are 4 additional Salvation Armies there and 4 additional Goodwills, including the Bins. So between Tampa and Orlando, there are 8 Salvation Armies, 8 Goodwill retails, and 2 Goodwill bin locations with 1 additional bin location south of here in Sarasota. So there are a ton of locations in these 2 areas. Also, there are untold number of mom and pop thrift stores. There are, in Tampa alone, there are over, my route was 60 pawn shops that I had in a spreadsheet. So there's 61 pawn shops. And then in Orlando, there's probably another 60. So those are my routes. That's what I really, really like to do.
Couple questions. How did you come up with the name Rockstar Flipper?
Yeah, that was the YouTube thing. So I started that channel as some people may know this or may not. I'm sure Adam does. As Small Business Millions, because I wasn't, when we bought and sold back then, I was not sold on like being a reseller completely as my entire life. I thought about other businesses and things that I might be interested in. And I was like, man, I should just call it small business, because small business was a highly searched term, of course, and people starting their own business. And I hated it. After I created Small Business Millions, I just was not interested. And I was like, I need a new name. And so one night really late, probably 3-4 o'clock in the morning, I was like, what do we do for a living? And I was like, man, we're flippers. We flip stuff. Like, that's all we do. And this is before, again, it was on TV. And so I came up with the word flipper, and I was like, I got to put something in front of, like Casey the Flipper. And I was like, no, I hate that. And I went through like 100 different ideas, like the Florida Flipper. That was one. And I was like, that sounds like a stupid like dolphin or something. And I was like, and finally I came up with Rockstar. I was like, done. I'm taking that. And I ran with it.
Bianca, our friend from Germany, who is very loyal to our reselling channels, she asked, why don't you sell privately via Instagram or through your own website? Why'd you decide to use the platform that you're doing? Instead of selling, basically cutting out the middleman, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, to save on fees and listing and stuff. Yeah, we do. So I promote my stores on Instagram and Facebook through my following. But a lot of times, if you guys will ever notice, and I used to get this question a lot, I would list like a really cool Harley shirt with a dog riding a motorcycle. On my Instagram, I'd put a picture like at the store or when I got home or whatever. And I would say, hey, check out this awesome Harley Davidson shirt that I picked up today. And people would start messaging me. They're like, oh my God, my husband would love that. Is it listed on your eBay store? How much? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not even home with it yet. Like, I haven't even got there yet. So I would message them back and I'm like, hey, if you're really interested in it, I was going to put it on eBay for $40. If you want to save me the fees and everything, I'll give it to you for 30. Just PayPal me the money. And so we do sell quite a bit of things directly through my following. And even if you don't have a big following, you can still sell things, because like on Instagram, if you hashtag like Harley Davidson, people look for stuff about Harleys. They may not follow you, but they might come across your post because they search for Harley Davidson. And all of a sudden they see this awesome shirt that you found, and they're going to message you or comment and be like, hey, that's amazing. Can I buy it? And so that's how you can get started. And you'll grow a following organically that way.
Well, wasn't your friend Stephanie from Florida, wasn't she selling like predominantly on Instagram? Yes.
So Stephanie, and this is a funny story, not last year at eBay Open, but 2 years ago at eBay Open. A lot of you guys probably know Stephanie. She's from a little town just north of Miami. It's about 3.5-4 hour drive from us, but she sells designer purses and Coach wallets and things like that. She bought a Louis Vuitton purse in Las Vegas while she was on the plane. On her way to Vegas, she had Wi-Fi, and she was searching Craigslist and Facebook. I don't remember where she found it, but she found it for like $300, and she offered him $250. And she literally told him, I'm landing at the airport in an hour, and as soon as I get to my hotel and check in, I will meet you on the strip and buy it. And they were like, oh, what hotel? And she's like, oh, I'm staying at Mandalay. And they're like, or at MGM at that year. And she's like, the girl that was selling it was like, I'll meet you in the front lobby of MGM. So it was perfectly safe, everything, thousands of people. They met, she gave her $250. She took it up to her hotel room, put it on the bed, took photos of it, listed it for $350, and sold it an hour later.
That's amazing.
Right on Instagram. She put it on her Instagram. Somebody found it. Boom, it was gone. I was like, you've got to be kidding. And so there's money to be made everywhere.
Couple quick questions. Dragonfly Girl, she's asking about where did you start in Maryland? You were in the Baltimore area, correct?
Yeah, I lived in a town actually called Pasadena, like the one in California. It's about 20 minutes outside of Baltimore. Anne Arundel County. It's in the capital of Maryland is Annapolis. So I live just outside of there too.
April Bougie Bear Vintage. Have you sourced Northern Florida? And if so, what places are good?
We went to St. Augustine in October, Halloween time. We did about 10 thrift stores and a flea market in St. Augustine. That was really, really good. The flea market was amazing. So if you're up near Jacksonville or St. Augustine, I've never shopped the Panhandle. I've only been to the Panhandle of Florida as long as I've lived here. I've only been there once. I know there's a couple that follows me really closely that live near Destin, Panama City area, and they do a little flea market there and a couple of Goodwills and Salvation Armies. They're only part-timers, but they do pretty good. Yeah, so there's some places up there. I'm not familiar with. Central North Florida is empty. It's all country land. But Jacksonville, St. Augustine, and then the Panhandle. So I'm not sure which area that she's in.
Our friend Night Required Field has decided to join us today. Just with this presence.
What's up,
Night?
Night?
I want to talk to you. I don't know if you do shows, but I would love to have you on. I love the concept of what you're doing, sourcing on the apps. And
yeah, Night actually goes with the business model that I used to do to a point. He does a little different than what I used to. But fast forward me from X years ago to now, and that's Night's business model where he buys things from people locally, electronics, high dollar items. He spends $300, but he's going to make $100 in profit. So, it takes us selling 5 or 10 items to do that. He buys and sells 1 item. So he's doing he'd rather sell 1 item and spend more money than 10 items and spend less money. So,
and they come to him.
Yeah, and they come to him. Yeah. That's one of the I'm going to give you guys a secret sauce tip. So if you remember, I said I didn't have a car and I had people meeting me at the gas station. So what I would do is I lived in city A and the gas station was B, location B, right? A couple minutes away. I could walk down there in just a minute. And so no matter where the item was located, it didn't matter. That gas station was always the midpoint. So if they lived 45 minutes north, I lived 45 minutes south of the gas station. So that gas station was midpoint. And if they lived an hour east, I lived an hour west. I didn't care if west meant I lived out in the Gulf of Mexico. Wherever they lived, I lived the other direction the same amount of time so that gas station was always the meeting point middle. Now, they didn't know that I lived 2 seconds away from there because I didn't want to ruin the business. But I couldn't get anywhere else, and I didn't want to lose the deal. So I'd always be like, hey, where do you live? Oh, I live in Daytona Beach. Perfect. Looks like Spring Hill is the middle point for us. I'm going to Google up, something in the middle of Spring Hill. Here's this 7-Eleven gas station. Meet me there. And that's what I did all the time.
Yeah, it amazes me what he does, and people come to him, and it's like he says, "I'll meet you outside. I live in the apartment complex B," and he just like people just show up, and he's there. And then when he'll have a price, and then they'll try to get a lower price or.
Yep.
He's amazing.
Always negotiate. Yeah.
Were there any other questions? You want to go into your 10 items or?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about some people. One of the things, once we get through the history and we get through the background and what I do and everything, people always ask, so what are some items that you buy now that are common? What are items that new sellers can start with? What are cheap items? What are good profits? And so I did a video just the other day. People wanted to know items that don't take up a lot of space. A lot of people are limited on inventory and storage, et cetera, et cetera. So I came up with items that I figured were small, under a pound, could be kept in small bins. You could have tons of them and it wouldn't take up any space. And I did a video on it. I did 10 of them for that one. I'm going to do some more. And I think Adam has a screenshot of it. Of the channel.
Shortly. Can you see it?
Yep. Okay, so this, if you search my name in YouTube, you'll come up with this, but it's top 10 low cost, high profit, small items. And so these are typically items that should cost you less than $3 an item. Some of them a little more, but most of them should be under $3. They're really small. Like I said, they're all under a pound. You can first class them. You can store them easily. And you should be able to make good profits. And by good profits, these should be $15, $20 item profitables and up. On most of them, again, there's some exceptions. So let's, I'm going to pull that up on my end. And so we can run through, and actually if you watch the video, I'll mute it on my end, but I'm going to run through it.
Stop sharing, or you want to?
Yeah, you can stop the screen share on it. Okay. And so I'm just going to tell people, basically the long story short on what the items are. I know what they are. They're in my phone, but I'm just going to scroll through so I do it in the order that I did them in because I don't remember what order I did them in. Okay, so the first one is, and so this is really great with the electronics in mind. Every electronic, your DVD players, your surround sounds, all that stuff, they almost all have remote controls. For the most part, people lose remotes like crazy. We know the old joke, the remote's lost in the couch. It's true. And the great thing about remotes, I see them at every yard sale, every garage sale, every flea market, every estate sale. And almost always they're sitting in a bucket, like a quarter each, 50 cents each. And when we were in St. Augustine, I bought 7 of them for 50 cents each. And I think 2 of them for $1 each. I sold like $180 worth of TV remotes. These things, people will pay $15, $20 for TV remotes, or Bose surround sound remotes, or LCD screens to controls, multiple devices. They'll pay $40, $50. So always keep an eye out for those remotes. People ask how to test them, put batteries in them, and apparently you can point them at your cell phones and pick up the infrared lights. So
yeah, I have actually a listing about that on my Facebook page. I have a picture that was on Google to show you how to test the infrared.
There you go. So yeah, so check out Adam's post on that for sure. But remotes are great. My bread and butter, my thing that I've sold more of in my life, with the exception of maybe cell phone money, is video games. I've sold thousands. At one point, we had 2,800 games at Amazon's warehouses. We still have quite a few, but video games have just been around since the beginning of time. They have a huge following. They're vintage. A lot of them go up in value. They're easy to find. They're everywhere. They're at pawn shops. They're at garage sales. So video games is certainly something to keep an eye out for. They're small. We used to have a bookcase that we shoved in the corner of our spare room, and it held 450 video games. And I could cram even more in there. So you can get a lot of inventory in a little bit of space. They're cheap. Usually you pick them up for a couple bucks. Pawn shops even sell them, $3 a piece, or buy 10 for 20. So you can get a lot of inventory for very little. Handheld video games too, the old time ones that kids played when I was a kid in the 90s and 2000s. Any of those are really good as well. Again, cheap, couple dollars a piece. Video game controllers and accessories, it goes right along with that category. The controllers are expensive. PS4 controllers are $50. I bought some used ones at a garage sale, $10 a piece, and I sold them for 40 each. So definitely something to look out for on that end. Hats have come back really, really big. Snapback hats, mesh trucker hats, anything with sports teams, flip top, bill top hats. They're all $15, $20, $25 items. And I see them for $1 at garage sales, never ending estate sales. One guy had a collection of fishing hats in an estate sale. I didn't get them, but I know the guy that got them. He bought 13 of them for $1 a piece. He got them for $13. And I think he told me he got almost $400 out of those hats. So
there was a question about the video games. If you don't have the console to test them, how do you know it's okay?
Okay, so this is one that I catch a lot of heat on. I do happen to own majority of the systems. I have one of those retro testers that tests like 4 different systems. I have PS4s, PS3s.
What's that called, Casey? What you're bringing
the
up?
retro?
Yes.
Trio. The one I have is called a Trio Retro.
Did you type that in the chat?
Yeah, TRIO. You see it? Trio. Ooh, what happened?
That's a great tip.
Where did it go? I lost the. Hold on. I lost the chat. What happened? Hold on. I lost the chat.
Okay. But just spell it. I guess people can.
Oh, here it is. I got it. Okay. Trio Retro. There's one called Duo Retro. I have the Trio. It tests Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis games in there. I own a PS3 and PS4, which also read PS1 and PS2 games. So I can test all the PlayStations. I can test those 3 retro systems, and I own a few of the handhelds. But so for Xbox One, for example, I don't have an Xbox One. I don't play Xbox. I have a video game cleaning machine. So because I did it seriously, but if you didn't have that, if the disc looks like it's in great shape, there's no scratches, there's no big chunks out of it, everything looks good, the returns are so low that really it's worth selling without testing it. If it's an older game like a Nintendo or an old Sega game, you can take denatured alcohol, use denatured, you can buy it at Home Depot or Walmart or anywhere, denatured alcohol and a Q-tip, and in the cap you just dip the Q-tip and you clean the inside of those cartridges, right where the plug-in is to it. And you just clean it with denatured alcohol. And I believe our return percentage on video games was like 0.001. It was never.
Is that something you
So
have to disassemble, take screws out, or with a special tool, or just
no, that like the Q-tip, we bought the really fine Q-tips, and you know the games where everyone blows in them, they're like you're not supposed to blow in them actually, but I know it worked. But the denatured alcohol cleans the contacts. A lot of times those games, if they're going to fail, they're just too dirty. And so that cleaning will almost always, I had games that people would tell me didn't work. Like they knew they didn't work and they gave them to me and I'd clean them, I'd plug them in and they'd work fine. They're like, oh my gosh. So
what's that? The Forever Genuine says with the disc, the thing is to look at the top of the disc. If light shines through, it won't play. What is? Can you elaborate on that?
Oh yeah. So what a lot of people don't know is that the bottom of the disc, where most people think it gets scratched, doesn't actually contain the information to a video game. That is simply the laser reading and spinning. If it's scratched, it won't be able to read it. The information is typically still good. And so that's why we can sand and buff the bottom of a disc, make it smooth, and it starts working again because it's not the actual information. The information, the data of the game is underneath the label on the top side. And so if the label, under the label gets damaged on the top side, that is where the disk data will get corrupted and you can't fix it. And so the way you tell that is if the light comes all the way through the disk, then it's damaged that flip top side and the data is corrupted. And that's where you wouldn't want to buy a game. You can't repair that.
As long as I've been doing this for 3+ years, I had never heard that before.
Yeah,
that's why I like to have people like you on, and thank you Forever Genuine.
Yeah, thanks Jen for pointing that out. I forgot about that. But I had to learn that quickly too because I was repairing games that had no chance of ever being repaired. And I'm like, man, how come I can't fix any of these? And finally somebody told me, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so I learned that. And so because I was always like, how come we can buff and sand this disc and it doesn't damage it? And they're like, well, it's no data. It's just that's what's stopping it from the laser from smoothly riding over it. And so you can sand it and smooth it down. The data is on the other side. I'm like, wow, like mind blown. So
a question about the dishes with Dish Network, I think, is reselling them.
The remotes from Dish Network?
DirecTV receiver, we don't have it anymore. Are they worth money?
Yes, some of them. Some of them are not worth selling. You have to look up the exact models. I've looked up quite a few that were just not worth anything, but I looked up some that were worth quite a bit. The model number will be on the bottom of it or on the back of it with that serial number sticker. There'll be a model number, and so you'll look that up. The cleaning, Joanna just asked the cleaning system I just mentioned. I use a JFJ Easy Pro. It's about $150. I think there's some cheaper ones, but there are some more expensive ones that can be $400, $600, $1,000. I came this close. We were doing so many video games to buying one that was $650. I never did. The machine I'm using is great for beginners. If you're not selling a lot of games, if you sell more than a few games a month, it might be worth investing. Because remember, if you can just fix a couple games a month and make an extra $10, $20, $30, you could, in a month, you can save yourself $100. A couple months, you can pay for it and you're good to go. We were selling 20 games a day. So
now JFJ, do they make two models? Is that the one you're talking about, or is that another brand?
JFJ makes two different models. Yeah, we had the JFJ Easy Pro. If you look it up, it should be right around $150. They have another one. They actually have a newer one too. Somebody was telling me about. But they're really reliable. I've had the same one for 3 years and never had an issue with it at all. So
now, what about while we're on that? There's the cleaning fluids that you use, and I understand you can use like aftermarket, or you don't use the aftermarket.
Yeah, I always ordered right from them, but some people told me you could actually use the car auto. What's it called? Like the cream. It's like it's a buffing cream, but it's like a gel or something. I don't know. The one that come in car auto that you would use if you're doing like your own home waxing.
Okay. Not
the actual wax, but there's like that buffing. Somebody might be able to, the word I'm looking for, clay
sure, if we Google that, we can find that. Okay.
Yeah. But so you can buy that. It's a little cheaper, but I always just bought the JFJ stuff. I got it cheap on eBay. A bottle of it will run you like $7 to $9, but it's good for hundreds and hundreds of discs.
Was it compound?
Typically, my cost was about 5 to 10 cents per disc, give or take.
My moderator, Michelle, knows everything. Was it compound, Casey?
Compound, yes. There you go. That's the word I was looking for.
I shouted you out the other night, Michelle. I said, "Oh, if we have Michelle here, she knows everything. every question that comes up in chat, she knows the answer to it."
Yeah, the polishing compound. That's it. There you go. Right. So you can buy that, but I just bought JFJ stuff. That was easiest. So yeah, that's the video game world, and it's really good. The hats. Hats are great. A lot of people know hats, trucker hats, that sort of thing. They got really popular with Paris Hilton. They're good now. That puts me back on the topic of retro vintage right now. Not just hats, anything retro and vintage, like the old Champion wear, the old NASA shirts. That stuff's all hot right now. So if you see any of that stuff, definitely pick it up. Neckties. Everyone knows I'm the necktie guy. I probably own somewhere north of 3,000 neckties. Personally, I own about 50. In our active listings, we've got about 300 or 400, and we've got another 2,000 or more in the closet that I need to go through. I'm actually invested in a new photography setup just for neckties. It should be here tomorrow. So we'll get started back on listing neckties. Why? They're readily available at the bins. If you have a bin store, you can get them for 10 cents by weight, 5 cents, 10 cents. At most thrift stores, they're 50 cents to $1, except for my stupid thrift stores that charge $6 for them. But you can get good deals on ties, and you can sell them. My average sale price on a tie right now is $15. Most of them I get 8, 10, 12. Anything with a good name brand, I'll get 12 to 15. And anything with a good brand like Vineyard Vines, $30 and up. So ties, great item. Again, they take up no room at all. Apple iPods, the tablets are big and take up a lot of space and cost money, but any kind of iPod is really good. iPod Classics with the scroll wheels, iPod Nanos like the ones runners have on those armbands tied around their arms, the iPod Touches, size of an iPod, really small. You can store a bunch of them. They're quick. They sell instantly. Anything with the Apple name sells instantly. Those are eBay only. Amazon recently outlawed Apple products except Apple. And Best Buy and stuff like that. But you can sell Apple products the same day you buy them and flip them and make really good money. Crafting supplies. So this is one that a lot of people don't know about. The glass keys on a typewriter, Scrabble tiles, any kind of material that's like, pink flamingos or crazy Hawaiian material. People use these crafting supplies to make clothes, to make buttons, to make projects. It is a huge community on eBay. It's good on Etsy if you're an Etsy seller as well. Those glass typewriter tiles, like a set of glass typewriter letters, can be worth $20, $30, $40. A bag of Scrabble letters, if they're normal, $10, $15. If they're vintage, $20, $25. Buttons, really unique buttons. People might know I have an obsession with Robert Graham shirts. A while back, I had a very difficult time finding Robert Graham buttons. In fact, I went as far as contacting corporate in New York City, and there were no buttons to be found. The one girl in corporate New York City actually sent me a couple, but it wasn't enough for what I needed. And one young lady who watches my YouTube owns a button store in downtown Manhattan. And she had the buttons. They weren't the same size. They were slightly bigger, but they were perfect. And we had to replace all the buttons. She sent them to me for free. Very, very sweet of her. But she told me if somebody had bought those buttons, they would have been $40.
Wow.
Shipped. So any crafting things like that have a huge audience. So something to keep a look out. One thing that I don't do, and I try to touch on always something that I don't do, but is jewelry. You might know our friend Tanya. I know Adam does.
There's a lot of jewelry sellers in my chat, and Tanya's been a guest on my channel. Yeah,
Tanya's been here on Adam's channel, and Tanya is a good friend of ours as well. Who's
excellent with jewelry.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is, always something I've never touched on. The only thing I've ever bought and resold is men's watches because I know the market pretty well. Jewelry is amazing, especially things like teal, turquoise, amber, anything with those stones, costume jewelry. Those girls do so good. They buy bags of jewelry at estate sales for $20. I swear to you, they come home and sell $200 worth of it before they go to bed. There's a
Barry Bennett has been on my show too. I see she's in the chat. I should have shouted her out. She's a jewelry person too.
There you go. So jewelry is a huge market. Just because Rockstar doesn't sell it, or Adam doesn't sell it, or whoever you watch doesn't sell it, great. Use what we do. But if there's something or you love or you're educated on, definitely, that's part of the take what's available to you, but also take what you know. I don't know jewelry, so I don't mess with it. But There's a ton of money to be made in jewelry, like tons. I see there's a girl who follows me. She's not social media, YouTube, well known. She has about 500 items listed in her store, 500. So for most clothing sellers selling an item per 100, if they sold 5 a day at $20 a day, that'd be $100 a day. They do 3,000 in gross sales, probably make 1,500 in profit. She has 500 items. She does like 15,000 in sales.
Wow.
Jewelry's just a high price point. Her average sale price is 50 bucks.
I know a lot of jewelry sellers. I mean, I'm trying to get into jewelry because I hate clothes. I'm trying to get more into hard goods, and jewelry is readily available.
Yeah,
I don't have experience with some of the other jewelry sellers, but
that's why I haven't gone after it. It's a tip I give people: don't be scared of stuff. But I'm terrified of jewelry. I don't know anything about it. So
just to backtrack a tiny bit, can you give us a few? Because I mean, people have issues with ties and picking up ties, like run-of-the-mill ties that don't sell. There's
most
which we'll get into the very end. We'll wrap up shortly.
Yeah, most of the brands of ties are not great sellers. Anything Walmart, Target, Sears, JCPenney, all that sort of stuff is not going to sell very well. What you want to look for is any kind of designer brand. So things like Vineyard Vines, Louis Vuitton, Burberry, Hermes, any of those top ones. You want to look for unique ties. If they're not designer, unique sells. Doctor's ties, veterinary ties with dogs on them, horse ties, fishing ties, the Beatles, Kiss, Michael Jackson, Rockstars, sports teams, any kind of sports teams. People will buy the sports teams up. Any kind of crazy out of this world. Jerry Garcia, everyone knows who he is, had a huge line of neckties that had these psychedelic, crazy colors. They sell pretty well. Anything like alcohol. Ties have a lot of wine ties. Every brand of liquor, just about. I've sold their ties. I've sold Absolute Vodka, Grey Goose ties. I've sold Captain Morgan tie. They all seem to have ties. They sell great. So anything unique like that really will do well on ties.
I guess that pretty much wraps up everything. All right, as far as
I think that's the only other item I put on that video was board game and game replacement, anything that replaces things, but a lot of games and a lot of like things that you might lose the pieces to, anything that you think of that you can lose pieces or lose part of, like even the backs, like, a PlayStation back cover, but like, the Risk board game, people lose all those little army figurines, anything like that. I mean, really just look up everything. Keep your eyes open. That's really the best advice I have.
Okay. Now, 2 quick things. We'll wrap things up. All the channels, people seem to ask these questions when they have guests on. Any apps or websites that we haven't discussed that you feel are useful that
one for sure, and I have a good friend who is the second in charge, and then also we've made good friends with the CEO of sellhound.com, and sellhound.com is a price comparison website. When you search for any item, it will show you the current average listed and the current average sold of the last 100 of those items on multiple platforms. Currently, I think they have 80 platforms, but it will always pop up with eBay, Amazon, Etsy, Macari, and Poshmark first. So if you search a men's Grey Goose necktie, it will tell you what they are currently listed for on average and what they've currently sold for in the last 100 of them. And so it's really spot on. If you took all of those sold listings on eBay and totaled them up and divided it, you would come up with that number that Sellhound has. It is deadly accurate. I have tested it and it works. And they are supposed to be coming out with, they're in a soft launch now, of a listing tool where they'll do the listings for you, which is great. So look forward to that. Sellhound.com. Really sweet CEO, Suzanne, and her second in charge, Alicia, is amazing. I met her in Dallas. So definitely check that website out.
I met her in Vegas.
Yeah, she was in Vegas. Yep. Mm-hmm.
My friend Tanya's here.
Tanya just jumped in. I just saw, did you mention me? We did mention you. I was talking about you.
Texted her or something.
Somebody must have.
Okay, so Sellhound, was there anything else that you wanted to?
No, Sellhound is the one I've been using a lot lately. Obviously, I use the sold eBay app and the Amazon seller app to scan things. Those are givens. You should always use those. But the Sellhound app is my go-to now. I love it. No, there's no cost to Sellhound. It is totally free. The new listing tool will have a cost once they get that out.
Okay, so I guess everyone
look at the love for Tanya. See, jewelry sellers are highly loved too.
Oh, they love. Well, Tiny deserves the love. She's a great
Yep.
person. Super special.
As soon as she teaches me how to sell jewelry.
Yeah, maybe she watch the channels like I do. I still haven't gotten into it heavily, but I watch all the top resellers. There's my friend Kimberly borderline hoarder-ish. Yeah, you are very late. We're ready to wrap things up, Kimberly.
Oh man, I just realized what time it was. Wow.
Yeah, so let's just get into a little bit about your YouTube. I listed all your information, your public Facebook group, your private Facebook group, your bolos. If you just want to do a little quick infomercial, and I have most of the links in my description of the video.
Absolutely, yeah. So I run a free Facebook group where there's a ton of people to network with, ask questions. It is called Thrifter Reseller World. You can just search for that right at the top of Facebook. Thrifter space reseller space world, and just submit your request, and I approve the request every day. So if you don't get in right away, just give it a few hours and you'll be in. I also have a private Facebook group. We have about 600 members. The free group has 109,000 members currently. It's a huge group, but the private group is more personalized, and a lot of people that you'll recognize and know in there. It's about 600 members of that. It is paid. It's $49 for the year. You get the whole year. And you get access to guides and bolos and lists that I put in there, live Q&A shows. Adam is in there. He moderates for the YouTube channel and the shows as well. And so if you want to join that, you can absolutely use the links. You can message me, email me, rockstarflipper@gmail.com. And other than that, Rockstar Flipper, if you Google it or any social media or YouTube, you will find me. It's all one word, Rockstar Flipper. And yeah, that's where you can get some more information. Join me. We have products, we have training classes, we have videos, we have live videos, we have everything that you could possibly need to become a better seller. And I will work with anybody that needs me to work with them, closer or one-on-one. We can schedule calls, and we'll get you to hopefully wherever it is you want to be, whether it's part-time, full-time, quitting your job, working out of your house, whatever you want to do. I will give you the best available tools to get there.
Okay, Casey, you just wait for 2 minutes. We're going to wrap things up real quickly here. Let's see here. We'll get to my always have issues with this. Let's see. Okay, I should be coming up shortly here. Okay. Am I coming up? Yep, there I am. Okay, guys, I just want to do a quick closing, and I wanted to thank Casey. Obviously, again, I literally mention Casey almost every single video that I do. He's a wealth of knowledge, a good person, willing to help. Again, the VIP group I love. The big group is good and bad.
Yeah.
When you have 90,000 members, there are going to be some rotten apples in the basket, so to speak.
We do our best.
So I mean, when I see things, and I feel like I'm a snitch, but it's like, Casey is super busy, and if I see something, I'll say, Casey,
Yeah, he does.
I mean, we don't need well, I won't go there. We don't need bad things happening in the group.
We do our best to admin and moderate it, but if you really want, the private group is all amazing people that we've sorted. So
there's a wealth of knowledge. There's new sellers. There's experienced sellers, and I mean, Casey is readily available. If you have questions, you can ask them in the group. The VIP group has its own private Facebook group. You can ask Casey questions. You can tag him. You can email him at rockstarflipper@gmail.com. He recognizes your email address, and he gets back to you as quickly as possible. It's a great source of information, and super nice people in that group. So I just want to close up, guys. Again, like everybody else, I'm looking for subscribers, trying to get that 1,000 magical mark. I actually lost a subscriber today, so if you're new to my channel, if you're coming from the Casey's group, again, you guys see me in his chat. I'm one of his moderators. I've been following Casey for about three and a half years now, and this is what I do. I try to bring on experienced sellers, and I do a lot of networking, and I know a lot of people in the reselling community, and I try to bring people with their specialized niches, and Casey has a wealth of knowledge just about everything, so it was super special to have him on today. But that's what I try to provide for you guys. And again, I tell you guys, it's basically for the beginner to intermediate seller. And I pick up something new every day when I have my show. I review the replay to try to improve myself for YouTube. And I also pick up tons of little nuggets when I rewatch the videos. So if you're not here on a live stream, you're watching the replay, I want to thank you. Again, please like, subscribe, click on the notification bell, the ringy dingy, and comment if you like. And I would appreciate it. And again, guys, thanks to all the moderators for being here. I moderate for quite a few channels, and if I don't thank you, I was inadvertent. I always try to thank my moderators for doing such a great job. So again, everyone, thanks again. And there's plenty of videos up there to watch, and you can watch my the various shows I have with the various resellers. So again, thanks guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.